Ladies and gentlemen, sometimes we look at our lives and wonder why things haven't happened the way we expected them to. We look at the clock and we see time passing, yet the dreams we hold so dear seem to slip further away. We feel delayed, like we've missed the boat, as if the moment for greatness has come and gone. But I tell you today, you were not delayed. God was simply preparing you for this moment. If we're honest with ourselves, we don't always understand God's timing. It's often easy to look around and see others moving forward, achieving their goals, and succeeding in ways we dream of. But the truth is, God doesn't operate on our schedules. His ways are higher than ours, and His thoughts are beyond our understanding. What seems like a delay is often a divine preparation. In the quiet moments when you feel stuck, when you're waiting for that door to open, God is working behind the scenes. He is shaping you, refining your character, and strengthening your spirit. He's not keeping you from something. He's preparing you for something far greater than you can imagine. You see, God doesn't just look at the destination. He looks at the journey. He knows that it's in the waiting, the struggles, the challenges, and the growth that we become the people we need to be to walk in the fullness of His plan for our lives. Remember, even in the seasons of silence, God is never idle. In the book of Isaiah, God promises that those who wait upon the Lord will renew their strength. It's not a wasted time, it's a time of preparation. Think of the seed in the soil. It's hidden, seemingly insignificant, but under the surface something powerful is happening. The roots are growing deep, the foundation is being set, and when the time is right, the seed will sprout and bear fruit. You are not behind. You are not forgotten. God is aligning the pieces of your life. He is working out the details, opening doors at the right moment, and equipping you with everything you need to fulfill your calling. So trust in His timing. Trust that He is not bound by the same limitations that we are. His ways are perfect, and His purpose for you is unshakable. So when the day comes and you step into the moment you've been waiting for, you'll see that all those seasons of waiting were not a delay. They were divine preparation. You are ready for this moment because God has been preparing you every step of the way. God's timing is perfect. Trust that God's timing is always right, even when it doesn't align with your own expectations. Seasons of waiting are not wasted. In times of silence and waiting, God is working behind the scenes to prepare you for what's next. Divine preparation, what may seem like a delay, is often God shaping, refining, and strengthening you for your purpose. Growth in the journey, the process of growth and development, is just as important as the destination. It's where God molds your character. Trust the process. Even when things seem uncertain, God is aligning the pieces of your life for the right time. God knows what you need. Trust that God knows exactly what you need at the right time, even when it feels like you're not ready yet. Strength through waiting. Waiting on the Lord renews your strength and builds your faith for the future. God sees the bigger picture. While we focus on immediate results, God sees the bigger picture and works everything together for your good. Patience prepares you for greatness. Patience in God's plan equips you to step into your calling with strength and purpose when the time is right. You are not behind. You are exactly where you need to be. God is preparing you, and the right moment is coming when you'll be ready to fulfill your purpose. God's timing is something that often challenges our understanding, but it is also something that we can trust with all our hearts. It's easy to fall into the trap of thinking that things aren't happening fast enough, or that we're somehow missing the opportunity. We look around and see others moving ahead, achieving their dreams, and we wonder why we seem to be stuck. In those moments, we need to remember that God is never early and He is never late. He is always on time. His timing is not like our timing. It is perfect in every sense. When we face delays or unmet expectations, we may feel disheartened or frustrated. But often these moments are simply a part of God's greater plan. He sees what we cannot see, and His perspective is eternal. While we focus on the present and what seems to be a delay, He is working things together in ways that will benefit us in the long run. What we perceive as a setback may be God's preparation, equipping us with the strength, wisdom, and character we need for what lies ahead. It's important to realize that God doesn't just look at the results. We are all part of a greater story that unfolds over time. Every part of our journey, even the struggles, serve a purpose. God knows when the right time is for things to fall into place, and He knows when we are truly ready for the blessings He has in store. We may feel that we're behind or that we've missed the window of opportunity, but nothing is beyond God's timing. He can open doors at just the right moment, no matter how long it takes. In the waiting, there is also a deepening of our relationship with God. As we wait, we are invited to seek Him more earnestly, to pray with more intensity, and to listen more carefully. It's often in the stillness of waiting that we hear God's voice most clearly. We learn to depend on Him not for what we want, but for who He is. Waiting transforms our desires and aligns them with His will. When we trust Him during the waiting, we build a deeper intimacy with our Creator. In the end, waiting is not about doing nothing. It's about becoming who we need to be to fulfill the purposes God has for our lives. Seasons of waiting may seem like they drag on, but in the grand scheme of things, they are moments of transformation. When we look back, we will see that these seasons were never wasted. They were seasons of preparation, lessons learned, and faith deepened. And when the time comes for the fulfillment of the promises God has placed in our hearts, we will be ready, having been shaped and strengthened in ways we could never have imagined. Divine preparation is something that happens quietly and often without fanfare, yet it is one of the most important aspects of God's work in our lives. We often focus on the destination, the final outcome, or the moment when everything falls into place, but what we don't always recognize is the vast, intricate preparation that takes place before we step into those moments. God doesn't just want us to reach our goals, He wants to prepare us to handle the blessings, responsibilities, and challenges that come with them. This preparation is not always easy, and it may not always make sense in the moment, but it is always purposeful. The process of divine preparation involves God working behind the scenes, shaping us in ways we cannot see or fully understand. He knows that before He gives us what we've been asking for, we need to be equipped with the right heart, mind, and spirit to handle it. Think of the way a builder prepares the foundation before constructing a house. Without a solid foundation, the structure would collapse. Likewise, God is laying a foundation in us, ensuring that we are strong enough to bear the weight of what is to come. Often, divine preparation includes times of testing. These times can feel uncomfortable and even unfair, but they are crucial for building our character. It's easy to believe that we are ready for something when things are going well, but it's in the trials, the challenges, and the waiting that we are truly tested and refined. God doesn't test us to punish us. He tests us to strengthen us, to show us areas in our lives where we need growth, and to help us rely more fully on Him. Through these tests, we learn patience, humility, perseverance, and trust. In divine preparation, we also see how God is constantly at work within us, drawing us closer to Him. He doesn't want us to just receive blessings. He wants to develop a deeper relationship with us. During times of preparation, we often find ourselves in seasons of reflection and growth in our spiritual lives. These moments, though difficult, are where we learn to lean into God's promises and develop a greater dependence on His strength, not our own. This deepening relationship with God is one of the most vital aspects of preparation. When we know Him better, we are more aligned with His will and purpose for our lives. God's preparation also involves timing, His perfect timing. He doesn't give us everything all at once. Often we feel impatient or frustrated when things aren't happening fast enough. But we must remember that He is preparing the right opportunities, people, and circumstances in our lives. His timing is always perfect, even when we can't see it. While we may want immediate results, the waiting period is necessary for us to grow, to be ready for the opportunities that will come, and to step into them fully prepared. When we look at people in the Bible, we see countless examples of divine preparation. Joseph, for instance, had dreams of greatness, but before he could fulfill those dreams, he was betrayed by his brothers, sold into slavery, and imprisoned. During those years, God was preparing him, not just for the palace, but for the wisdom, humility, and leadership required to handle the responsibilities that came with it. David was anointed as king, yet he spent years in the wilderness hiding from Saul and learning to trust God. Moses spent 40 years in the desert before leading the Israelites out of Egypt, and during that time, God was preparing him for the monumental task ahead. Each of these individuals went through a period of divine preparation, and when the time came, they were ready for the calling God had placed on their lives. In our own lives, divine preparation is no different. While it may be uncomfortable at times and feel like we're not moving forward, God is at work shaping and refining us for the purpose He has in store. His preparation often involves seasons of waiting, trials, and struggles, but it is during these seasons that we grow, mature, and become more fully equipped for the path ahead. And when the time is right, we will step into the purpose He has prepared for us, with the strength, wisdom, and character we need to fulfill it. Ultimately, divine preparation is a process that transforms us from the inside out. It teaches us to trust God more deeply, to rely on His timing, and to walk in the fullness of His plan for our lives. While the journey may be challenging, it is always worth it, because God is preparing us for something far greater than we could ever imagine. Growth in the journey is one of the most profound aspects of life, yet it is often overlooked when we're focused solely on the destination. It's easy to get caught up in where we're going and forget that the steps we take along the way are just as significant, if not more so, than the goal we're striving toward. We live in a culture that celebrates results and instant success, but God values the process, the journey, and the transformation that happens within us as we move through it. Every stage of our journey has the potential to shape us, refine us, and help us discover more of who we are and who God is calling us to be. There's something beautiful about how the small moments, the day-to-day experiences, and the challenges we face can mold us into better versions of ourselves. It's not always the mountaintop experiences that define us, but often the valleys, the quiet times, and even the difficult moments that bring about the most significant growth. These are the moments that stretch our character, deepen our faith, and develop qualities like patience, perseverance, and humility. In the journey of growth, we begin to realize that transformation often happens in the most unexpected places. We may not see it in the middle of a struggle, but looking back, we can see how those moments of difficulty were the very things that prepared us for what we would face next. The challenges we experience serve as opportunities to trust God more deeply, to surrender our own desires, and to rely on His strength. We often want to avoid hardship, but it is through those very struggles that we are refined. The process of becoming is often more important than the destination itself. As we journey, we are constantly learning. Every new experience, whether good or bad, adds something to our understanding of ourselves and the world around us. The mistakes we make, the setbacks we face, and even the victories we achieve all contribute to our growth. We learn what works and what doesn't. We learn to persevere when we feel like giving up, and we discover the strength we didn't know we had. In this process, we come to a deeper understanding of God's faithfulness and His purpose for our lives. The journey teaches us to trust His timing, to lean into His promises, and to know that He is always with us, guiding us every step of the way. Growth in the journey also involves letting go of expectations. We often vision the journey as a straight path leading directly to our goals, but in reality, it's more like a winding road with unexpected turns, obstacles, and detours. These detours, though frustrating at times, often lead us to places we never could have imagined. They provide us with opportunities we might have missed if we were focused only on the destination. God knows what we need and when we need it. Sometimes the things we think we want aren't the things we actually need. The journey allows God to shape our desires, to refine our vision, and to align our hearts with His will. As we grow through the journey, we begin to understand that growth isn't always linear. There will be times when we feel like we're making progress and other times when we feel like we've taken a step backward. These ups and downs are part of the natural rhythm of life, but with each step, we are becoming more of who we are meant to be. The key is to embrace the process, to trust that each experience, whether positive or negative, is shaping us into the person God intended. Even the slow, seemingly insignificant steps are still steps forward. Every moment has the potential to be a learning experience that adds to our growth. Throughout our journey, it's important to remember that growth doesn't just happen for our benefit. It impacts others as well. As we grow, we become more equipped to help those around us, to encourage them, and to share the lessons we've learned. Our growth isn't just about personal development. It's about being prepared to fulfill the purpose God has for us and to make a difference in the lives of others. The more we grow, the more we can reflect God's love, wisdom, and grace to those around us. The journey itself is an integral part of God's plan for us. It's not about reaching a final destination, but about becoming who He created us to be in the process. We are constantly being molded, refined, and transformed into the image of Christ as we move through life's challenges. While the destination may be important, the growth we experience along the way is what truly shapes us. It is through the journey that we learn to trust God more deeply, understand ourselves more fully, and embrace the person He is making us to be. Each step, each moment, is part of a greater work that God is doing in our lives. The growth that takes place in the journey is what equips us for the future and prepares us to walk in the fullness of our purpose. Trusting the process is one of the most essential aspects of life, yet it's often one of the most challenging. In a world that emphasizes quick results and instant gratification, waiting and trusting the journey can feel uncomfortable and uncertain. It's easy to become impatient when things don't unfold the way we want or expect them to, and even more so when we can't see the end result. But trusting the process is about surrendering control and believing that everything, including the delays and detours, has a purpose in the greater plan for our lives. When we are walking through life, we often have a clear vision of where we want to go, but the path to get there is rarely a straight line. There will be obstacles, setbacks, and unexpected turns. These moments can lead to frustration or doubt, especially when progress seems slow. Yet, trusting the process means having faith in the unfolding of events, even when we can't see the big picture. We must come to the understanding that growth doesn't happen overnight, and the way forward may require patience and endurance. It is through trusting the process that we learn the most important lessons. We learn to rely not on our own understanding, but on the wisdom and timing of God. Often, we want things to happen on our timeline, but God works in His perfect timing. He sees the end from the beginning, and while we may feel stuck or delayed, He is working all things together for our good. Trusting the process involves accepting that we don't always know what's best for us, but God in His infinite wisdom does. He is the master of the long game, and while we may focus on the immediate, He is preparing us for something greater that requires a journey to get there. The process, though sometimes difficult, builds resilience and strengthens our faith. It teaches us to trust in something bigger than ourselves, to hold on to hope even when it feels like nothing is happening. When we trust the process, we acknowledge that the growth that occurs during the waiting period is just as important, if not more so, than the destination. Each moment of waiting, each step we take, and every struggle we face contributes to shaping us into the people we are meant to become. The obstacles are not barriers to success, but opportunities to build endurance and character. In trusting the process, we learn that success is not just about the end result, it's about the person we become along the way. God uses the journey to refine us, to remove things in our hearts that may hinder our progress, and to build up qualities in us like patience, perseverance, and humility. There are things we would never learn if we were given everything we wanted immediately. The process is what prepares us to handle the blessings and responsibilities that come with success. Without it, we may not be able to fully appreciate or sustain what we're asking for. There will be times in life when things don't make sense, when we question why we're going through certain challenges or why the breakthrough seems so far off. During these times, we have to remind ourselves that the process is working, even when we can't see it. God is still at work, even in the quiet moments when we feel like nothing is happening. Trusting the process means believing that every step, every delay, every hardship, every triumph is moving us closer to the fulfillment of the purpose God has for us. When we trust the process, we let go of the need to control every aspect of our journey. We trust that God is leading us in ways we may not understand, but will eventually make perfect sense. Our role is not to rush ahead or try to manipulate outcomes, but to follow the path He has set before us with faith and obedience. The process, with all its twists and turns, is exactly how God works in our lives. He uses it to prepare us, to teach us, and to refine us into the person we need to be to carry out the purpose He has designed for us. It's in those moments of trusting the process that we discover our strength, our faith, and the unwavering presence of God in our lives. We may not always know where we're headed, but if we trust the process, we can rest in the knowledge that we are being shaped, refined, and prepared for something greater. God's process is never wasted. It's a part of His perfect plan, and if we trust it, we will find ourselves growing in ways we never imagined and stepping into a future full of purpose and promise. There are times in life when we find ourselves uncertain, unsure of what comes next, or questioning if we are truly getting what we need. It's easy to become consumed by our desires and our plans, thinking we know exactly what would fulfill us. We can convince ourselves that we need something in particular, a job, a relationship, an opportunity. But the truth is, God knows exactly what we need, even when we don't. We often look at the present and focus on the things that seem to be missing. We make lists of what we think will bring us happiness, peace, or success, but these desires are sometimes driven by our limited understanding of what is truly good for us. God, however, sees beyond the immediate. He knows our hearts better than we do, and He understands the bigger picture. He sees not just where we are now, but where we will be in the future and what we will need to get there. His knowledge far exceeds our own, and in His wisdom, He gives us exactly what we need when we need it. When we pray and ask God for things, we often do so with a specific request in mind, but God may have something different in mind for us. He may say not yet or no because He knows that what we're asking for isn't aligned with His best plan for us. His refusal is not a rejection, it's an invitation to trust Him more deeply and understand that He has something better in store. Sometimes we ask for what seems good, but God knows it would not serve us in the long run. What we think we need and what God knows we need can be two very different things. And it's in these moments that we have to trust that His wisdom surpasses our own. God's provision is always in line with His perfect timing. We often want things to happen immediately, especially when we feel like we're lacking or struggling. But God knows when we're ready for the blessings He has in store. He knows when the time is right for us to receive something, whether it's a new job, a relationship, or even the emotional healing we long for. His timing may not always match our own, but it is always perfect. Sometimes we need to wait for the right circumstances, the right moment, or the right growth within ourselves before we can fully appreciate and handle what God is preparing for us. God doesn't just give us what we need in a physical sense. He also provides for our emotional, mental, and spiritual needs. When we feel weak or discouraged, God knows exactly what will strengthen us. Sometimes it's a word of encouragement, a shift in perspective, or the quiet presence of His peace. Other times it's the hard lesson or challenge that forces us to grow. These moments, though difficult, are essential for our development. God knows the kind of growth we need in order to become who He created us to be. His provision is holistic. It encompasses all of our needs, not just the ones we are aware of. When we understand that God knows what we need, we can begin to let go of the fear and anxiety that often accompany our desires. We don't need to scramble or force things to happen because we can rest in the knowledge that He is working everything together for our good. This doesn't mean that life will always be easy or that we will always get what we want, but it does mean that we can trust that God is always with us, providing what is best for us, even when it's hard to see. We may not always understand why we're going through certain things, but we can trust that God knows exactly what we need in order to fulfill His purpose in our lives. In times of uncertainty or lack, it's important to remember that God is our provider. He sees our struggles and our needs, even the ones we are afraid to voice. He cares deeply for us and is constantly working on our behalf, providing for us in ways that are both seen and unseen. Whether it's the strength to face a challenge, the wisdom to make a decision, or the peace to rest in the unknown, God knows exactly what we need and will provide it at the perfect time. His provision is not just about material things, but about the deeper, lasting fulfillment that comes from His presence and His purpose being worked out in our lives. Understanding that God knows what we need invites us into a place of peace. It frees us from the burden of trying to figure everything out on our own. Instead, we can surrender our worries, our desires, and our plans into His hands, trusting that He will take care of us. We don't have to chase after what we think will satisfy us because God, in His perfect love and wisdom, already knows and is providing exactly what we need. Waiting is a challenging and often misunderstood part of life. It's easy to view waiting as a passive, inactive state, but in reality it can be a profound opportunity for growth, transformation, and strength. While we are waiting, whether it's for a breakthrough, an answer to prayer, or a season of change, we often feel as though nothing is happening. But in those moments, God is at work, strengthening us in ways we may not immediately recognize. There's a kind of strength that only comes through waiting. When we wait on God, we are forced to relinquish control, to step back and trust that He is moving, even when we can't see it. Waiting teaches us patience, not as a passive acceptance of our circumstances, but as an active trust in God's timing. It's during these times of waiting that we learn to depend on God, not just for what we want, but for who He is. We discover that He is faithful even in the silence, that He is working behind the scenes in ways that we cannot yet understand. This trust grows stronger the longer we wait, as we begin to realize that God's plan is better than anything we could have imagined on our own. Waiting also strengthens our endurance. Life has its share of challenges and trials, and waiting often brings us face to face with our own limitations. We may feel weary or discouraged at times, but as we wait, we learn to persevere. We learn to take each day as it comes, to press on even when it feels like progress is slow or non-existent. This kind of endurance doesn't happen overnight. It's built through the daily act of trusting God and continuing forward even when the finish line feels out of reach. And with each step, we become stronger. In moments of waiting, we are also forced to confront our impatience and our desire for immediate results. Waiting exposes the parts of us that want to rush through the process, to take shortcuts, or to find easier ways to get what we want. But God uses this time to refine us. He works on our hearts, teaching us to wait with hope, not frustration, with faith, not doubt. He teaches us that the process is just as important as the outcome, that the journey shapes us in ways that the destination never could. The strength we gain through waiting is not just about the ability to endure, but about the maturity we gain as we learn to trust and rely on God, even when the answers don't come as quickly as we hope. There is a unique kind of strength that comes from waiting in the unknown. When we don't know how things will unfold, when we don't have all the answers, it's easy to become anxious or fearful, but God uses these times to help us grow in faith. We learn to take our focus off the unknown and place it on what we do know, that God is good, that He is faithful, and that He will never leave us. Even in the midst of uncertainty, He is with us, strengthening us, preparing us for what's to come. In these moments, we develop a deeper sense of peace that comes from knowing that God is in control, even when we can't see the full picture. As we wait, we are also learning to trust in God's sovereignty. We can be assured that no matter how long we wait, God's timing is perfect. What seems delayed to us is often the very moment God is preparing us for the next step. He sees the end from the beginning, and He is orchestrating all things for our good and His glory. The waiting process doesn't mean that God has forgotten us or that He is inactive. It means He is working in ways we can't yet see, aligning everything perfectly for the future He has planned for us. Strength through waiting also teaches us to live in the present moment. It can be easy to get caught up in what we want for the future and forget to appreciate what is happening right now. Waiting helps us learn to live fully in the present, to trust that God is with us in the moment, even if we're not where we want to be yet. It's an invitation to cultivate contentment, knowing that God's presence is enough, no matter what the future holds. Each day of waiting becomes an opportunity to grow, to learn, and to draw closer to God. In the end, waiting doesn't just build our strength for the future, it transforms us in the present. It molds us into people who are more patient, more hopeful, and more trusting in God. It refines our character and helps us to see the world through God's eyes, understanding that His timing, His plans, and His ways are far better than anything we could devise on our own. So, while waiting can be difficult and sometimes painful, it is never wasted. It is in the waiting that we are strengthened, transformed, and prepared for all that God has ahead. Life often feels like a series of disconnected moments, where we can't always understand why things happen the way they do. We encounter setbacks, unexpected detours, and challenges that leave us wondering how it all fits together. In those moments, it's easy to become focused on what's in front of us, the difficulties, the unanswered questions, the things we can't control. But God sees the bigger picture. While we may only see a small part of the story, He sees the entire canvas, from start to finish, and knows exactly how everything is connected. It's easy to get caught up in the moment, especially when life feels overwhelming. We may struggle with disappointment, fear, or confusion, not realizing that in the grand scheme of things, these moments are just a small part of a much larger plan. God, in His infinite wisdom, sees how all things work together for our good. What might feel like a detour, a delay, or even a setback is often a necessary part of God's greater plan. While we focus on the immediate, God is working behind the scenes, weaving together every experience, every choice, and every person to bring about His perfect will for our lives. When we're walking through difficult seasons, it can be hard to see how anything good can come from the struggles we face, but God sees the bigger picture. He knows the end result and the person we will become through the journey. He knows that the challenges we encounter now are shaping us, refining us, and preparing us for something greater down the road. What might feel like a painful experience today is often the very thing that will equip us for tomorrow. We may not understand it in the moment, but God knows that everything good and bad works together to shape our hearts, minds, and spirits into the people we are meant to be. This bigger picture also includes those around us. Often we think about how our circumstances affect us personally, but God sees how our lives intersect with others. He knows the way our actions, words, and choices ripple out into the lives of the people we encounter. He understands the connections between us all, even when we don't see them. Sometimes we may feel like we're going through something alone, but God is always at work, using our lives to touch others in ways we can't fully comprehend. He sees how our story is woven into the fabric of other stories, and in His wisdom, He uses each of us to fulfill His purpose in the world. God's perspective is so much broader than our own. Where we may be concerned with the immediate, our job, our relationships, our health, God sees the full picture of our lives, our destinies, and His eternal plan. His vision encompasses not just the present moment, but everything that has happened, is happening, and will happen. While we may only be able to see the road directly in front of us, God sees the entire journey, and He knows exactly how every step we take fits into His perfect will. This knowledge brings us peace, knowing that our lives are not random or out of control, but part of a greater purpose. This bigger picture perspective also gives us hope. When we're in the midst of a trial, it can be hard to see how things will ever get better. We may question why certain things happen, and it's normal to feel lost or uncertain. But God, with His infinite understanding, knows the outcome. He knows the beauty that will come from the ashes, the growth that will emerge from the pain, and the purpose that will be revealed in due time. While we might see only darkness, God already knows the light that is ahead, and He promises that He will never leave us, even when we can't see the way forward. Our understanding of the bigger picture is limited, but God's vision is all-encompassing. He's not just concerned with what happens in our lives today, but with the eternal perspective, how our lives fit into His ultimate plan for the world. Each of us is part of a larger story, one that is far greater than what we can understand. And when we trust in the bigger picture, we are able to surrender our need for control and trust that God knows exactly what He's doing. He sees how every chapter, every twist and turn, every victory and struggle is leading us to something far greater than we can imagine. When we live with the understanding that God sees the bigger picture, we can approach life with a greater sense of peace. We don't have to have all the answers. We don't have to know what the future holds. All we need to do is trust that God is in control, that He sees the full story, and that He is working everything together for our good. Even when life doesn't make sense, we can rest in the assurance that God sees beyond our current circumstances and is leading us towards something beautiful, something greater than we could ever have imagined. Patience is often seen as a virtue that is difficult to practice, especially in a world that prizes immediacy and instant results. We live in a culture where the expectation is for things to happen quickly, whether it's achieving success, finding love, or reaching personal goals. Yet the process of patience is one that plays a pivotal role in preparing us for greatness. It's in the waiting, the moments of stillness, and the ability to endure that we are truly transformed into the people capable of carrying the weight of the dreams and desires we hold. Patience doesn't simply mean waiting passively, but rather it is the ability to endure in faith and trust that the right time will come. It's an active state of waiting with expectation, knowing that God is at work even when we cannot see the fruits of our labor. The process of waiting is a refining process that molds our character, fortifies our strength, and equips us with the emotional and spiritual resilience needed to handle the responsibilities and challenges that come with greatness. It teaches us how to persevere through hardships and how to trust that every season, no matter how difficult, is preparing us for what lies ahead. Through patience, we learn to develop discipline and self-control. These qualities are not often gained through immediate success or easy victories, but through the process of striving, failing, learning, and rising again. Each trial, each delay, each moment of uncertainty teaches us something about ourselves, our weaknesses, our desires, and our capacity for growth. We discover the parts of ourselves that need to be shaped and refined before we step into the fullness of our purpose. Without patience, we may rush through these lessons, missing the essential building blocks that are required to sustain the greatness we long for. Greatness is not a destination, it is the result of a process, and that process often takes time. Think of those who have achieved greatness in any field, whether in business, sports, or personal development. Most have faced seasons of preparation that were difficult and at times seemed to have no visible results. But through patience, they endured, and in time their efforts bore fruit. The waiting period is often where the seeds of greatness are sown, is where skills are honed, where relationships are strengthened, and where perseverance is developed. The struggles and setbacks that may seem discouraging at the time are actually part of God's plan to equip us for the future. Without these formative experiences, we may not be prepared to handle the weight of what is to come. The act of waiting patiently also refines our desires. It's easy to want something so badly that we become frustrated when it doesn't happen on our timeline. But patience teaches us to wait for the right timing, to align our desires with God's will, and to trust that He knows the perfect moment for things to fall into place. This kind of waiting forces us to confront the things that drive us, our impatience, our need for validation, and our desire for control, and allows us to surrender them to God. In doing so, we create space for His will to be done in our lives, and we learn to trust that His plans are far greater than our own. Patience also builds character. In those times when we feel like giving up, when we are tempted to take shortcuts or abandon our goals, patience teaches us to keep going, even when the way seems hard. It's through those long, difficult stretches of waiting that we build the character needed to sustain us when success eventually comes. Without the strength that patience provides, we may not have the foundation necessary to handle the pressures and responsibilities that come with greatness. Greatness isn't just about achieving something, it's about becoming someone capable of handling that achievement. Patience gives us the time to become that person. Moreover, patience teaches us the importance of timing. Greatness often requires not just hard work and talent, but also being in the right place at the right time. In the waiting period, God is aligning circumstances and preparing us in ways we may not fully understand. Just as a farmer must wait for the right season to harvest, we must wait for the right season to step into the fullness of our purpose. Patience teaches us to trust that God is orchestrating everything according to His perfect timing, and that He is preparing us for opportunities that will come when we are ready. Without patience, we might miss the right moment, rushing into something for which we are not prepared. Finally, patience is a key ingredient in learning to trust God. When we are patient, we are ultimately saying that we trust in His sovereignty and His timing. We believe that He knows what is best for us even when our own timing seems more urgent. Through patience, we acknowledge that we do not have control over everything in our lives, but we trust that God's plan is far more grand and detailed than anything we could imagine. This trust deepens our relationship with Him and strengthens our faith. It is in waiting on Him that we learn to rely on His wisdom and not our own understanding. In the end, patience is what prepares us for greatness. It is the foundation upon which all other qualities needed for success are built. Resilience, character, discipline, trust, and alignment with God's timing. Without patience, we may find ourselves rushing into opportunities for which we are not ready, or missing out on the lessons that come through waiting. It is in the waiting, the enduring, and the trusting that we are prepared to walk into the greatness God has destined for us, equipped with the strength, wisdom, and heart to handle it. In life, it's easy to look around and feel as though we're falling behind, especially when we see others seemingly advancing faster or reaching milestones that we've yet to achieve. The pressure to keep up can feel overwhelming, and it's tempting to compare our journey to the paths of others. But the truth is, you are not behind. You are exactly where you need to be, and your journey is unfolding according to God's perfect timing. The world often promotes the idea that success must be achieved on a specific timeline, by a certain age, in a certain way, or under certain circumstances. This creates a sense of urgency and competition, as if we're racing against time to reach an arbitrary finish line. But the reality is that God's plan for our lives is unique to each one of us. His timing doesn't adhere to society's expectations, and He's not in a rush. While others may seem to be ahead, they are on their own path and you are on yours. It's easy to forget that everyone has their own set of challenges and struggles that are invisible to the outside world. The pressure we feel is often more about the pace set by others than about the pace that is right for us. God, in His infinite wisdom, knows exactly where He's taking you and what you need to experience along the way. It's not about how quickly you get somewhere, but about the preparation you undergo to be ready for the destination He has planned for you. Sometimes the delays, detours, and even what seems like stagnation are part of the process that's making you stronger, more resilient, and more prepared for the opportunities ahead. Every season, every struggle, every success, and every failure is a piece of the puzzle, shaping you into the person you need to be for what is to come. When we feel behind, it's often because we're measuring our progress based on someone else's success, not recognizing that our journeys are entirely different. Comparison steals joy, peace, and purpose. It creates false narratives that cause us to feel inadequate or lost. The truth is, your pace is not determined by the progress of others, but by God's purpose for you. What you're going through right now, whether it feels like progress or not, is an essential part of your growth and development. It's part of His plan to make you into the person He's called you to be, and He's not concerned with the timeline that the world has set. One of the most powerful things you can do is embrace where you are. Instead of focusing on what's ahead, take time to reflect on what you've already accomplished and how far you've come. Every step forward, no matter how small, is progress. Trust that each moment, each day, each season is preparing you for what lies ahead. The foundation being built right now, even if it feels like waiting, is vital. It's laying the groundwork for the future, and nothing that happens in this season is wasted. You're not behind. You are in the exact place you need to be to build the strength, wisdom, and character needed for the next steps. It's also important to recognize that the path you're on may take unexpected twists, and sometimes those twists can feel like setbacks, but God uses every part of your journey to refine you, teach you, and prepare you. Those moments when you feel like you're at a standstill are often the moments when the most growth is taking place, even if you can't see it right away. He works in the quiet, in the waiting, in the process, in ways that are often invisible but deeply transformative. Your waiting season isn't wasted. It's essential to the fulfillment of your purpose. When we look at others and think we're falling behind, we fail to realize that they too are on their own journey. They are not ahead of us. They are simply moving at a different pace, just as we are. Each person's path is filled with its own lessons, challenges, and opportunities. And just because someone else seems to be where you want to be, doesn't mean that their journey is easier or without its own set of struggles. Their timeline doesn't define yours, and your timeline doesn't define theirs. Life is not a race, and comparing your journey to someone else's only causes unnecessary stress and anxiety. Trust that you're right where you need to be, and that each moment brings you closer to the purpose that God has designed for your life. You are not behind because God's timing is perfect. He is the author of your story, and He's orchestrating every detail, every step. What feels like delay or detour is often the preparation needed to equip you for what lies ahead. You may not see the full picture right now, but God does. He sees the end from the beginning and knows exactly what you need in order to be ready for the next season of your life. Trust in His timing, trust in the process, and trust that every step is leading you closer to the plans He has for you. The journey might not look like what you expected, but it's unfolding exactly as it should. You are not behind. You are exactly where you need to be. In the end, the journey you are on is uniquely yours, crafted with purpose and intention by a loving God who knows exactly where He is taking you. It's easy to get caught up in the pressures and comparisons of life, but we must remember that our timing is not the same as God's. Every delay, every struggle, every season of waiting is shaping you, preparing you, and equipping you for the greatness ahead. You are not behind, for God's perfect timing is at work in your life. Trust the process, embrace where you are, and believe that every step, no matter how small, is part of the divine plan that will lead you exactly where you need to be. Stay patient, stay faithful, and rest in the assurance that God is with you, guiding you toward the beautiful future He has prepared for you.